You're watching Adam the Bull on the BetRivers Network.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers. If you're not using the BetRivers app, you're losing out, folks. It's as simple as that. From football to college football, basketball around the corner, hockey around the corner, baseball. In fact, I'll have a baseball parlay for you today. I'll have another one on Friday as we head down the stretch of the baseball season. To tennis and a whole lot more. Check out the BetRivers app today. You're going to love it. We're also going to love the fact that I'm talking with Ron Rivera. Ron Rivera was part of one of the, maybe the best team. Well, no maybe for me. To me, the 85 Bears are the greatest team I've ever seen. Certainly the greatest defense with the greatest running back. Ron Rivera, of course, was on that team, played for the Bears, longtime NFL head coach. Now he's with NFL Network. And Ron Rivera is going to join me. That's coming up next, right here in the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers. All right, welcome back to the Bullpen with Adam the Bull. We're now thrilled to be joined by longtime NFL coach Ron Rivera. Coach, how are you? And how are you enjoying taking a break, not coaching this year? Is it relaxing? Is it stressful?
It's interesting, Adam, because I have a whole new perspective in terms of watching the games. I still have my coaching hat on, so when I'm watching and I see mistakes, I'm calling them out. My wife's, she's trying to shush me because I keep saying, well, what is he doing? Why would he do that? Look at the technique, and so she's going, you know what? You need to take your coaching hat off and just kind of be either an analyst or a fan. So, it's been different. It has been a little bit challenging, that's for sure.
What's the bigger adjustment? I think I know the answer, but I certainly could be wrong. Going from player to being done with your playing career, or taking a break from coaching? What's the harder adjustment?
I think it was playing, to be honest.
Yeah.
At least my first experience, because, I kind of popped around for a couple of years trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. And, my wife and I had this conversation, and she looked at me and said, you need to get back into football. You've always talked about coaching. Why don't you go for it? I said, well, I really don't know how to. And it's, to get into it, because it's not like I had all these connections other than just having been a player.
Sure.
But what happened, Adam, was I was watching a game with Walter Payton. I was actually working for Sports Channel Chicago. I was on the sidelines doing some stuff. And Walter Payton and I were talking, and something had happened in the game. And I said, you watch this, they're going to come right back to it. I promise you, they'll do it again. And we don't have an answer for it. And sure enough, they came back, ran this outside zone play and turned the corner for 12 yards. And he looked at me and goes, why aren't you coaching? I said, well, I don't know how to get started, Walter. And fortunate enough for me, Walter was on the board of directors for the Chicago Bears. And he looked at me and said, you know what? Come see me tomorrow. We'll figure something out. So I went by his office on Monday. He and I sat down. We had a great conversation. He said, I'm going to talk to Big Ed McCaskey. Virginia McCaskey's husband, he was the chairman of the board. And the next day, Walter called me and says, hey, Big Ed wants to see you. So I went in, made an appointment to see Mr. McCaskey. He and I sat down and he said, Ron, the season's already started, but next year we'll work something out. And so Dave Wanstead called me in the off season, gave me an opportunity to come in and be part of the coaching staff, and the rest is history.
Wow, that's amazing. That is so cool. And not surprising, I guess, from an outside perspective, that Walter Payton is an awesome dude and would look to help a friend out.
Unbelievable dude. A great teammate. He really was a great teammate. And, just, God, he is missed. He really is missed.
Before we get to the current NFL, I know. So when you guys won the Super Bowl, I think I was 14 at the time. And I'm not a Bears fan, but you had to, just as a football fan, as a kid, you admired what you guys did because that team was so special. And, I'm like a lot of people now. I'm obsessed with offense, but at the time, I think I felt differently. And just watching the defense on that team, not that you guys didn't have a good offense, but the defense was just ridiculous. And when I look back, every time a team has a good defense, I say, well, it's not the 85 Bears. What do you, of all the defenses you've seen since, what do you think was the closest? Was it the Ravens that year? Was it the Buccaneers? The Seahawks, maybe? I don't know. What was the closest in your mind?
To me, it was either the Ravens, just because of the way they dominated things as an entire unit, or it was the Giants with LT. I mean, he was explosive, dynamic. he was physical, and it kind of, you saw the rest of the guys play that way. I mean, they had a great linebacking core. It's just, Bill Parcells has done a tremendous job, and it's one of those things. I think that, it's funny you say that, because everybody compares them to what we did, and it's crazy, because what was real interesting about it was Buddy Ryan was ahead of his time, using stuff that he used way back when. I mean, all that stuff he did with the 46 defense, he had done before in his past. And it was just something that, just kind of cycled through. The man truly was a genius. And it's interesting because, he's, in my memory, he really was one of the best defensive coordinators I've ever been around.
What do you think of the direction the current Bears are headed with Caleb Williams at quarterback?
I like it. His first 3 games haven't been what I expected. I expect him to be a little bit better off right now. And I think he's just adjusting to how things are right now. And I like who they are. I do. They've got playmakers on the offense. They've got a defense that's stout that, last year finished strong. And expect them to play the way they have been. They've been playing pretty good. The special teams have been solid. It's just right now, I think Caleb is still kind of finding his footing. It's interesting because watching last night, Jayden Daniels was spectacular. And, it's interesting, I'm working with the NFL Network now. And last week I'd asked for some analytics, some quarterback numbers, and I should have brought them with me. But what was real interesting was the things that they are doing right now are all beneficial for a young quarterback. It's really neat to watch. They've put him in position where he gets the ball out of his hands. Okay, he has the quickest snap to release than anybody in the league, and that has been very beneficial. But what's been happening, and we saw it last night, was with all those quick throws, all those underneath plays, it has set up the deep throw. Look what happened with Terry McLaurin last night.
Unreal.
We just went off. I mean, everybody was saying, "What's wrong with Terry? What's wrong with Terry?" And Terry kept saying, "This is a process. Be patient." And we saw it last night. I mean, Jayden was spectacular. Cliff Kingsbury really seemed to have a nice hold of the flow of that game, and he took his shots when he needed to, and Jayden responded by doing the things that you would expect from the quarterback, not a young quarterback, but from the quarterback in a good system.
No, it's the first game. I don't know if you saw the stat. First game in over 80 years where there were no punts and no turnovers
or penalties. I mean, I shouldn't say the penalties were low. I mean, I think it wasn't until the fourth quarter that Washington had their first penalty. But you're right. That was an interesting finish to the game, and I heard the stat too that no punts. Yeah. I mean that's I've heard where one team didn't punt.
Yeah, sure.
Both teams didn't punt.
Yeah.
I mean that's crazy, and it's I think it's kind of a reflection of what's happening with offenses right now.
Yeah. As someone who obviously coached Terry McLaurin, I've said recently, I think he's the most underrated wide receiver in the NFL. He appears to be a great teammate. And, obviously he hasn't had great quarterbacks throwing to him. Hopefully he does now. But this guy seems to have, be as good as anybody. He's just, it's
the hard part for someone like Terry was, is kind of, existing in anonymity because, we couldn't find that quarterback. I mean, we bounced around from one to the other for 4 seasons trying to find that right guy. And it just shows you how hard it is to find a quarterback. And when you do find one and he is special and you start marrying him with playmakers around him, you're going to create more opportunities, more explosive opportunities. And Terry's one of those guys that he's going to explode. I mean, he's going to have a couple here, a couple, then all of a sudden he's going to have a big catch. He'll make a big play. And it's just one of those things in terms of the way he does things. He just goes about his business. He's a tough physical kid. And he is a good teammate.
Here in Cleveland, the Browns, as you know, have been looking for a quarterback forever. I think a lot of fans thought the Browns had it with Baker Mayfield. He had an up and down 4 years, 1 year good, 1 year bad. The Browns decide to move on. They get the opportunity to get Deshaun Watson. When that happened at the time, I and most of Cleveland were, thought we hit the lottery because Deshaun Watson in Houston
Mm-hmm.
Looked like he was as good as any quarterback not named Patrick Mahomes there for a while. And obviously it hasn't gone particularly well here in Cleveland, the suspensions, the injuries. What do you make, Coach, of Deshaun Watson and what's gone on for him the last few years? And what are you expecting from him on the field going forward?
Well, what's interesting about him is he was a terrific talent. He really was. Did a lot of good things in college football, got an opportunity, and really kind of moved forward and was headed in that direction. Then the biggest thing that has sidetracked him, and you guys know it better than anybody, has been what has happened off the field. I mean, those are things that really do affect a player. It affects the people around him, and it affects the team itself, and it affects the community. And those are hard things. And every time something else comes up, becomes that distraction. Believe me, I dealt with it for 4 seasons. These last 4 seasons have been the hardest 4 seasons I've ever had as a coach. And a lot of it had to do with things that didn't occur on the field as much as it was happening off the field.
Right.
And believe me, that distraction does play into a lot of things for a lot of people. It really does. And I think that's the biggest thing. If there was ever a way to just put everything that's happened to him off to the side and let the young man just focus in on playing football, let his teammates only have to answer questions that dealt with football. You know what I'm saying? I mean, That's the hard part, is when you have to answer something that has nothing to do with you. When they say, well, what do you think about what happened with him? What's going on? That's taking you away from what you want to focus on. I mean, trust me, I know 4 years of it, of answering questions that really had nothing to do with my time there. And that was difficult, because now I've got to try and control it and keep it out of my locker room. And the first questions that you always get from specific media people, especially those that aren't there to cover the sports, but are there to sensationalize what's happened, they come out with those questions. I mean, we didn't just have sports reporters in our locker room. We were having the daily news reporters coming in, trying to create more news, and that was tough. I mean, it really was. I mean, I understand those are serious things, but we weren't part of it. We were just innocent collateral damage in terms of having to deal with answering those questions.
Yeah, and that sucks. I mean, in the Browns case, at least it was a player. So, you understand why the question is being asked. Whereas in your case, it's the owner that's, causing the distraction for the team, and that's unfortunate. When you see Deshaun Watson play, is that guy still there? Is that special talent still there?
It is, because, I sometimes I watch him and I think to myself, guys, he's trying to be a prolific style quarterback. He's trying to stay in the pocket. His superpower is playing on the move. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's like it's like last night you watched Jayden Daniels. Again, he's a young quarterback. I get it, but what he's done though is he's kind of adapted to the speed of the game a lot quicker than some of the other young guys have. And so you watch him play. He's got a clock in his head that goes off at the right time, and then he uses his superpower. He starts to move. When that young man starts to moving, it changes what defenses can do. I mean, last night they didn't play a lot of man coverage in Cincinnati. They looked like they played a lot of zone to me, and what that did was it gave him the opportunity to extend plays. Why? Because they're rushing 4. They're not bringing a lot of pressure. Okay, so he had a chance to stand back there, look at things, and when things broke down, he took off and ran. I mean, that's I think what you're getting with a guy like Deshaun is that if he can stick to the things that I think that he does very well, and that's he throws well on the move. He can extend the play with his legs. Okay, keeping his eyes downfield, he can get the ball downfield. I think there's still that guy there. It's just that for whatever reason, sometimes it looks like me is like he wants to stay in the pocket and be prolific.
Coach, I'm curious. The Browns have, for the last number of years, had a very good offensive line, but their offensive line, it's getting older. Joe Bitonio is probably their best player, their left guard, but he's going to turn 33 in a week or so. They're banged up on the line.
Yep.
Their right tackle, who was a rookie last year, had a nice season, is, he's like 400 pounds, so he seems very slow right now.
Yeah.
But the biggest story in terms of the offensive line is the fact that the Browns had Bill Callahan as their O-line coach, who obviously is universally regarded as
one of the best,
if not the best coach, right? So now they have an offensive line coach who's much less experienced. How much of a difference does that make? Because the fans are like, it's all about the coach. And I can't believe it's all about the coach. Certainly some of it is about the coach. I can't believe the entire offensive line just falls apart because the coach goes. But how much do you think is the coach in losing Bill Callahan?
Well, I know this. Coach Callahan's mentality is very tough, very physical, and his expectations, his standard is very high, and his reputation most certainly is a tremendous one. And guys like that, they set the tone and tempo for a lot of things. Okay, I know that when I've been around him and I've watched him and I've seen him do things, it affects everybody, offensively, defensively. If you got a tough-minded defensive line coach and you got a tough-minded offensive line coach, your fronts are going to be very, very, very salty. They're going to go out and they're going to play very, very physical, and they're going to set the tone. One of the things that you always used to know is that when you play Cleveland, what were you going to get? You were going to get a downhill, physical, running football game. That was the type of football game you had to be ready for. When a guy like Bill Callahan moves on, it changes everything, okay? That's what they're trying to establish right now in Tennessee. They want to be physical. They want to go out and they want to get after people. And that's how you set the tone and tempo. I don't know his replacement in Cleveland, to be honest with you. But if he is somebody that's new to everything, what's going to happen is he's going to have to set his own identity. He's going to have his own personality. The worst thing I've seen coaches do is they try to emulate the person that they're following. They used to say the worst job in coaching is when you follow a legend, when you follow a Mike Ditka, and you follow Don Shula, when you follow Tom Landry. The expectations are so unfair. Well, it's the same thing for positional coaches, especially a guy like him. He's set the standard. Now the next guy's got to come in. He's got to live up to that standard, but he's got to be able to do it his own way, make his own mark. Okay, but that's hard, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time. It takes a little bit of growth, and not just of the coach himself, but the players around him. They've got to be comfortable. They got to understand what's being expected, what his standard is. So that Adam can really play into it. It really can. I believe it really can. Especially, I had John Matsko was my offensive line coach for 12 years. Okay, Coach Matsko is one of those guys who is highly regarded. Okay, and it's one of those things to try and just, replace that guy is not simple.
Yeah, and Andy Dickerson is the new Browns offensive line coach. Last 2 years he was with Seattle as the offensive line coach, but that's it. He was an assistant O-line coach. But yeah, you go from a guy who's one of the best in the game to a guy in his third year as an offensive line coach. No matter how good a coach he may be, it's certainly not going to be the same. And I wonder, I hadn't really thought about it this way, but I'm curious your thoughts. Bill Callahan, you talk about him being so tough and he set an attitude and an edge. Kevin Stefanski, I think overall in Cleveland has done a very nice job as the head coach. But he's a very mild-mannered guy. Like, I don't know. Obviously, I don't know what he's like in the locker room, but I don't think it doesn't seem like he's the fiery type of guy that Bill Callahan is. And I wonder if the combo of Kevin Stefanski's kind of mild-mannered and Callahan's fiery was good, and maybe they're missing that from the offense, the balance.
They could. I mean, the big part of it is the personalities on your coaching staff as well. Yeah. And Coach Stefanski is very bright, very intelligent, good football coach. I love the things that he's done. I love the style of offense he plays. But one thing that does happen is when you lose coaches, okay, that's hard, especially if you don't have a succession plan or if you don't have a guy already in position ready to go. My time in Carolina, when I lost Rob Chudzinski, I had Mike Shula in the wings ready to roll. Yeah. And so I was able to promote him right away to offensive coordinator. And Mike was terrific, gave us great years, helped get us to a Super Bowl. I lost Sean McDermott, and Steve Wilkes was waiting in the wings, and Steve got his chance and just took off with it. And we didn't miss a beat. But then I lost Steve in 1 year. Yeah. And my next guy wasn't quite there yet. He was still growing as a coach. And so things, sometimes those things change. And when those little things change, it makes a difference to your players, especially in the locker room, especially in the meeting room, especially out on the field.
Another loss that the Browns have had, and hopefully this will change soon, is Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb obviously as good as any back we've seen in the past decade. He gets seriously injured week 2 last year. He's fighting his way back. Nobody's going to outwork that guy. But he's not ready yet. Hopefully he's back week 5, but who knows? And who knows how good he'll be, Coach? I mean, this guy has been one of the best, but outside Adrian Peterson's the only back I could think of that came back from a torn ACL and you didn't even know it, that he was hurt. Most guys take time. I don't know. Nick Chubb is a freak, but I don't know. What are your expectations for him when he comes back?
It does take time, and that's one of the hard things. I mean, Nick Chubb really is a class back. I mean, he is a big physical downhill guy with good quicks and speed. He's a good one cut, put his leg in the ground and go type guy. And if he can come back and be that, it's going to help the offense. It really will. I mean, again, he's got that mentality that he's a physical player, and that will also help the rest of the guys around him too. So, hoping for Cleveland that they do get their guy back, that they do get that guy that can carry the ball 25, 30 times and really just keep things going as far as their offense is concerned.
Coach, despite last night's game, offense has been way down so far this season.
Passing offense is
passing offense. That's fair. You're right.
Running the ball is up. That's another one of the analytics that I'd asked for from our guys, and he showed it to me. And I'm telling you, you see it. There was an increase. Oh gosh, I wish I'd kept those numbers with me because they're in my other room. The numbers just show it that right now more teams are running the ball more than they're throwing the ball. Throwing touchdowns has stayed flat. Rushing touchdowns have increased. Quarterback rushing has increased as well. That's the other thing that's showing. And when you got young players like Jayden Daniels that have come into the league and then are running and picking up valuable yards and really being a big part of their offense, you're going to see that. That's one of the trends that is that's starting to step up a little bit more. And if you're not that type of fluid runner as a quarterback, you're going to have to be a dynamic pocket passer. Which, like a guy like Purdy. Purdy has enough mobility that every now and then he can pick it up. But he's such a good pocket passer, such a good play-action passer that's what you're looking for is that type of quarterback or one that's got the ability to run.
It's so funny. You're right. And it feels like this massive change is happening in the NFL before our eyes, right? And in terms of the running quarterback, like when Michael Vick first came in the league and even when Cam Newton first came in the league, there weren't that many quarterbacks that were running, and now it seems like the majority of the quarterbacks, like even a guy like Joe Burrow, he's not. You don't think of him running, but he's a good athlete. He can run when they need him to. The statue quarterback, the guy who doesn't move at all. I mean, there's almost none of those guys left in the league.
But look at what's happening with the rest of the players around them. First of all, with the offensive line, those guys are getting bigger. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
What's happening on the defensive side to counteract all the passing we've had in the last 5 years? Yeah, they've gotten smaller. They've gotten quicker. Yeah. So you're watching, I think that there's kind of a little bit of an adjustment saying, you know what, we're getting this situation. This is a smaller, defensive unit compared to what, so let's run the ball out. Let's grind it out. We did that a couple of games a couple of years ago. And one of the teams that was most notably, like that was, the Carolina Panthers were a little bit light. And so what we had said, hey, we can run the ball at these guys. They're light on the end. They their defensive ends are right around 255, 260. Let's go attack those guys. And that's what I think you're seeing is that when you see teams come out and they're a little bit smaller, you're going to see these bigger offensive lines just start attacking. I think that's really kind of what's been happening too, is just because of the size of the guys on the defensive side aren't as big, as bulky. You're instead of playing 3 linebackers, you're playing 2 linebackers with an extra safety as a big nickel. We used to call it the Buffalo nickel when I was in Philadelphia with Jim Johnson. Buffalo being bigger than a regular nickel, so we would go Buffalo. Well, you put another safety in there now. Guess who they're going to run the ball at? Okay, and then you put them on the same side as your 250-pound out a defensive end. You're definitely getting the ball going that direction. Yeah. So a big part of that, Adam, is looking at what your opponent is and how they're doing things. And that, I guarantee you, is a big part of what's happened is, again, you want to match personnel, okay? And all of a sudden you're looking at teams like the Rams, that wide receivers all block, okay? Yeah. They all block. Cooper Kupp is not a small dude. He is a physical player.
Yeah.
Okay, Puka, is a physical player. Big wide receivers, okay? I watched Drake London the other day on watch him block. I mean, guys are coming into the league and they're not just good pass receivers, not just fast and quick, but they're physical wide receivers. Those guys are starting to become in vogue. And once you get those type of players, you want to use them to the best of their skill sets.
It's fascinating, the trends in the NFL. It's always changing, and teams are always adjusting. I wonder if we'll, over the next 10 years, start to see the big linebackers again, because it feels like, there's no Lawrence Taylors anymore. There's no guys that size, very rarely.
But they got to run. They got to be able to run.
That's
I'm
true.
I'm going to tell you right now. Yeah. I've watched some games where I've watched some of the linebackers, and I thought, ooh, he's good between the tackles, but you start getting him out on the edge, that's going to be tough. Imagine, you're playing, you're playing a Jayden Daniel type quarterback, and you have a linebacker that's a big physical guy, but he doesn't run as well, right, and he's going to, and you're going to ask him to break down on this guy. That's going to be tough. I mean, it's about matchups, and it's about having the personnel to match up against who you're playing.
Coach, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, no problem, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome talking with Ron Rivera. What great insight he gave us. And I'm really going to be thinking about this Bill Callahan not even missing from the coaching the offensive line perspective specifically, but the yin and yang, as he put it, between him and Kevin Stefanski, good cop, bad cop. We talked a little more off the air, and it was really fascinating. That'll be something to keep an eye on the rest of the season. All right, thanks to Z, thanks to Max, and thanks, of course, to Ron Rivera. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. Over 5,100 of you, close to 5,200 of you have become subscribers, and I appreciate it. Please pass the word, and if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Doesn't cost you much. Thanks as always. We'll talk to you next time. Where else but right here in the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers. See you, everybody.